All right, what's up, everybody? How are you? Welcome to The Sweat, a wholesome hour of DFS and sports betting content made just for you, delivered by us. Jessie Coffield, Emerson Lotzia. We'll do that thing you like here on the Diamond as the World Series begins tonight. We're also taking trips to the ice and the hardwood.
Okay, but we're going to first turn our attention to Week 8 around the NFL, and that means another Millie Maker contest is live in the DK lobby. Now, this week you can compete for a prize pool of $3.5 million, with $1 million going to the winner, who's also going to punch a ticket to our Fantasy Tournament of Champions live final coming up in January, which, guess what? It's another shot at $1 million and a massive prize pool of guaranteed money. Wow.
Here's the lineup. Last week's winner built to take home a bag of $1 million $1 bills. What?
I don't know if it's okay.
Well, $1 million $1 bills is $1 million. So sorry about that. I know you're bad at math. Megan Joy, one of had 83 lineups in this contest. Some low ownership though for this winning one. All over the board here. DeAndre Sweat 7%, 28 points, and look at the bottom 4 spots there on this roster. More than 207,000 lineups, and you're looking at the Week 7 winner. So here to help you become the Week 8 winner and get rich, our NFL panel, DraftKings contributors Pierce Dietrich, Jeff Ulrich, RotoWire's AJ Schultz.
Wow, what a crew. This is NFL Price Check, guys. So it's a first look at Week 8 salaries. We're going to start at quarterback. Whose salary are you digging this week, Jeff?
Well, I guess I'm going to cater to my host here because I'm kind of digging Trevor Lawrence's salary.
Oh, my God.
Anytime a quarterback is 5,500 against the Seattle Seahawks right now, you should probably consider playing him. It's the team that's allowed the 4th most passing yards against so far. Realistically, even in a low-volume passing game last night, they made Jameis Winston look pretty good. Jameis also almost ran for a couple touchdowns. That could have been a lot bigger night, but all things considered, in a 13-point game, he still pushed for over 16 DraftKings points. Again, you're going to see Jacksonville throw the ball more than New Orleans did because everybody throws more than New Orleans. And the one thing I really do like about Lawrence lately, the rushing, man. I mean, it is there. He only had 11 yards in his last outing, but before that, 7, 8, 6 rushes. This guy's getting it down. He had 2 rushing touchdowns his last 3 games. Probably gonna, push for, again, over 30 yards against a bad Seattle defense. This is a really good spot to use Trevor Lawrence.
Okay, so AJ looks like he's going to get whiplash from how vigorously he's shaking his head now.
Wait, well, hold on. Can we get a headshot for Trevor Lawrence? He is literally the Lord and Savior of an NFL franchise, one of just 32 NFL teams on this planet. We don't even have a headshot. DK, we're better than that. I'll get it taken care of.
Maybe they just don't think he's going to last. Who knows?
Are you kidding me? And he's beautiful, too. Anyway, speaking of
AJ,
beautiful.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, I usually like to pay up for my QBs to try and eliminate some of the variance at the top of my top position there. But you have to consider how absolutely bad the Washington defense has been against the pass this season. League highs in both TDs and yards allowed, including 5 catches of 40-plus yards. All that to say, I'm going to consider paying down and going with Teddy Bridgewater at 5,400 here. Look, if you take that Baltimore game out of the equation, he's actually having a relatively decent season. 5 games with 2 or more TDs, 4 games of 250-plus yards. Teddy Bridgewater's numbers aren't terrible, and Washington is just the prime matchup, I think, weekly at this point for QBs. And at 5,400, I think you absolutely have to look Bridgewater's direction.
All right, Pierce, what are we thinking?
Teddy Bridgewater, Trevor Lawrence. That tells you everything you need to know about this position and this slate in general. It's pretty ugly. You can pay up for some safety, or you can go down and take some of these ugly plays. And typically in these ugly slates, these are the guys that are more efficient and they're better point per dollar plays. So I'm going to stay with AJ's game. I'm going to go to the other side, take Taylor Heineke. Denver is just as bad. It's Week 8. Your DVOA is what your DVOA is. And they allowed, 21 passes, 21 completions of 33 passes, 199 yards to Case Keenum, who was a spot emergency starter without his starting running backs, with a banged-up offensive line. They couldn't get the job done. Heineke in his last start against Green Bay, 268 passing yards, 95 rushing yards. He's gone over 40 rushing yards in 3 of his last 4 games. He's basically beardless Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, that's who he is. And when you play Ryan Fitzpatrick at this price against a bad defense. So I like Heineke. I know it's scary, but Everybody we mentioned so far is scary.
Yeah, you're right about that. Is it Halloween yet?
Lawrence, Bridgewater, and Heineke. What's going on today, guys? Are you guys okay? This is weird.
Raining here.
I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm feeling great, man.
Great. You're always doing great. Is Mercury in retrograde again?
Yeah, I heard Mercury is in Gatorade, so.
All right.
Things always get a little dicey when Saturn is in.
Let's go to running back,
vitamin water.
Shall we? Price check for us there, please, Pierce.
Kenneth Gainwell, $5,000. Maybe this one's scary as well, but Miles Sanders, high ankle sprain. He's probably going to be out a couple weeks. One thing we do know that we don't need to worry about is Detroit's run defense is terrible. They've allowed 6 rushing touchdowns. They've allowed 6 receiving touchdowns to running backs, the 3rd most points to running back. I guess if we're trying to get spooky and scary, one of the concerns is that Philadelphia doesn't give the ball to their running backs enough, and we can see Jalen Hurts poach all the touchdowns here. But if you look at the Philadelphia line, when it comes to run blocking for the running backs, they're getting 4.7 yards per carry, so the line's doing the job. And if you look at last week against the Raiders, which was a negative game script, Philadelphia was down by a ton of points, and still they gave the ball to the running backs 18 times. That's a good step forward. Kenneth Gainwell should be able to get there based on the volume in this great matchup. You got to worry about Boston Scott. You got to worry about Hurts poaching the touchdowns. But through the air and on the ground at this price, it's not going to take much against a bad Detroit team.
All right, we have price check 4 players up to this point. Half of them do not have headshots. This is not like a value play segment. You can't just leave $15,000, $20,000 on the table.
Apparently
you gotta
you can.
spend it here.
No,
but
Wait till we get to tight end.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
Tight end threes that aren't even on the roster, man. I mean.
Okay, all right. Well, hey, Jeff, take us to your running back then. Maybe your guy has a picture.
I'm going to throw a little class into the mix here. Let's go with Joe Mixon at 6,900. I mean, Joe Mixon really hasn't, he's starting to split carries with Samaje Perine, but he's still the main back there. He's the lead. He's the early down back, especially early in the game. And they're playing the Jets. So if you watched the game last week, you know what Damian Harris did. He went nuts on about 15 carries. I see a similar outcome here for Joe Mixon. Going to get those early down works. Did break off a long 20-yard touchdown late in the game last week against Baltimore, who also isn't great against the run. But the Jets are just getting pummeled by opposing running backs. They can't hold up late in the game to all these carries. And the same game script is going to happen here. Cincinnati's a solid defense. Who knows who's going to be starting at quarterback? So Joe Mixon should be in a high-volume spot to get some carries on the ground. Yeah, he doesn't catch receptions anymore. Who cares in this spot? It doesn't matter because he's probably going to have a great shot at hitting over the 100-yard bonus here. Looks a little bit too cheap considering the opponent.
AJ, which running back has a price you cannot pass up?
Well, you asked for us to spend some money, so here we go. Derrick Henry, 8,900. Top of the price range. Let's not overthink this, guys. 10 touchdowns. That's 4 more than the next closest player. 124.1 yards per game. I think he's worth taking a shot in here. Yeah, okay, the Colts there are having a pretty good year in terms of run defense. They've only given up 2 TDs all year round, long, but that's only going to maybe scare a few people away between the price tag and the defense that he's facing, the matchup concerns. I don't have any concerns about it. I expect him to keep rolling, keep running downhill, and he'll rack up some more points.
All right, let's move on to wide receiver, AJ. Who you going with here?
Well, I'm going to stick with the same game, but I'm going to flip teams here at wide receiver and go with the Colts' number 1 target, Michael Pittman, for 5,300. No team has allowed more DraftKings points to wide receivers this season than the Titans at 49 DraftKings fantasy points per game. They're also giving up 11.4 yards per reception. I think it's a good spot to target Pittman or even Zach Pascal if you want to go further down the list. Either one of these guys is a viable option against that questionable beat.
All right, wide receiver. Who do we like, Jeff?
Well, I was going to mention Michael Pittman, but there are some dudes in the 6K range who I think also that a lot of these guys are going to be under-owned. I mean, you've got DK Metcalf playing with Geno Smith. You've got Keenan Allen in kind of a rough spot. I actually prefer Deontay Johnson here. Cleveland, for how good their pressure rate is and how good their defense can look at sometimes, they can also just come apart at the seams. And you look at Deontay Johnson. I mean, he is the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. The dude has got 12 or more targets in 3 of his last 4 starts. I mean, we crave this kind of volume I don't care how bad Ben Roethlisberger is playing here because he's going to throw the ball to Diontae Johnson 10-plus times in this spot. And as I mentioned, Cleveland, they can fall apart in the secondary a little bit. 9 touchdowns already to the wide receiver position. So I think Diontae Johnson at 6,700 isn't going to be super highly owned. But when you start to look at target share and realistically just what the Browns do good and what they're not necessarily good doing against, and that's sometimes limiting these receptions to high-end wide receivers, I think Diontae Johnson at 6,700 is a little bit too cheap, especially when you stack him up like who he's stacked up against in this range. So I think that's a play who you should really keep an eye on this week, especially for the big fields where he's probably not going to be that popular.
All right, Pierce, who are you rolling with at wide receiver?
Scary Terry McLaurin, $7,600. Denver's allowed a 40-yard or longer pass 7 times this season. That's the worst in the NFL. McLaurin caught a 40-yard bomb last week, 7 catches for 122 yards. He also dropped a touchdown pass. You always worry about that with McLaurin, or just bad passes coming his way through Heineke. Denver blitzes a lot. They're one of the top teams when it comes to blitzing. They've got a pretty high adjusted sack rate, but their pressure rate's not that high. Their knockdown rate's not that high, and they pay the price. When they don't get to the quarterback, they give up these big passes, and they give up a lot of yards through the air. This can be noticed with their bad pass DVOA. They've got some familiar names in the secondary: Kyle Fuller, Pat Surtain, Bryce Callahan. But just because they're familiar doesn't mean that they're good or they're supposed to be good. It doesn't matter. This is week 8. They're not playing well. They all have low PFF grades. This is a team that you can attack. McLaurin has 747 air yards this season, so you've got a deep threat against a team that allows deep passes. If you're trying to win a GPP, you need those big plays. This could definitely bust with his quarterback, but this also could be another big boom play.
All right, guys, let's pick up the pace just a little bit here on tight end. Jeff, I got to start with you because you teased it a few players ago. Here, who's your guy at tight end?
Head down to the creek, get out your bait and tackle box, and roster Adam Troutman this week. 2,700.
Oh my
Teams
God.
against Tampa Bay, what do they do? They throw the ball. No one throws the ball than opponents playing Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Troutman's basically their wide receiver too right now because they don't really have anyone other than Marquez Callaway, actually other than Alvin Kamara to catch the ball. 3 targets. He set season highs in targets the last 2 games. I actually really like this play at 2,700.
All right, Pierce.
Ricky Seals-Jones, 3,800. I know 3 Washington players. What's wrong with me? But the Washington scheme or system, or maybe it's Tyler Heineke, they love going to the tight end. You got to look out. Logan Allen might be back, but if Logan Allen's back, he's cheap as well. You can't avoid this volume. We're always wanting the touchdown from a tight end. Rarely do you get volume this cheap. This is cheap volume.
Okay, AJ, bring us home.
I'm going to stack with my QB recommendation here, and I'm going to go with Noah Fant for 4,900. He's the 5th most expensive tight end on the board, sure, but he's also the number 2 target behind Cortland Sutton for the Broncos, and clearly Bridgewater likes him as his second best option here, so got to pair those 2 up.
All right, guys, good stuff. Now it's time to check in with our good friend Ross Tucker for Power Ranking Tuesday. Ross reveals his top teams following the Week 7 slate, and we're going to start with number 7, which is a team that didn't even play last week.
Number 7, the Dallas Cowboys.
They had a bye, not much to say. It is interesting, though. I dropped the Cowboys 2 spots. I put a couple teams ahead of them, like the Rams, the Bengals, the Packers. I just was impressed enough. Look, you snooze, you lose. The Cowboys didn't play, and based on what I saw from the Rams and the Bengals and the Packers, I think that they'd probably beat the Cowboys right now. But I have the Cowboys ahead of the Ravens because the Ravens did not look very good.
Speaking of the Packers, they are number 6.
So go, Pack, go. Dun, 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 dun. Go, Pack, go. You know, that's one of those where they didn't play their best, but they still won. They got problems, though, Bri. Defensive coordinator Joe Barry, star wide receiver Devontae Adams, both went on the COVID list yesterday, and they play the Cardinals Thursday night. An amazing Thursday night game, Cardinals-Packers, but the Packers will really be shorthanded. Cardinals are having a good go of it in terms of who they play. I mean, and when they play them, I guess, more importantly.
Number 5, the Cincinnati Bengals.
How about the Cincinnati Bengals in my top 5? There's a guy on Twitter who hits me up at Ross Tucker NFL every week, Bri, to complain about the Bengals power rankings spot. Every week, without fail. I don't even know his name. I don't pay attention, but I don't think he's going to complain about 5. Maybe he will, but I have them number 5. That's the highest the Bengals have been in eons. Do you know what an eon is, Brian?
A really long time.
Yeah, I agree.
Number 4, the Los Angeles Rams.
Eons and eons ago. Rams have a good team. There's no question. And it feels like their defense is playing better again, which is clutch.
Number 3, the Bills.
Bills had a bye, so not much to say. I still think they were a really good team. You know, they did not play their best against the Titans. Clearly the run defense. But even so, if Josh Allen doesn't slip on the quarterback sneak, they still win that football game.
Number 2, the Bucks.
I don't think anyone is really going to dispute this, disagree with this at this point. Bucks have an awesome team. I said this earlier about the Bears. I was not expecting them to take care of business like they did so emphatically against the Bears, but there's a real haves and have-nots this year. I mean, there's a pretty big drop-off after about maybe I'd include the Raiders, 11, but then I think the Browns at 12 and Colts are pretty good too. So maybe there's not as much of a drop-off as I thought.
Russ's number 1 team, which is totally meaningless, but it's fun and will get many of you incredibly annoyed, is...
Once again, the undefeated Arizona Cardinals at number 1.
Well, look, even though they were down against Houston, they still win 31-5 or whatever it was. They got a great chance to really cement this ranking coming up Thursday night against the Packers. And I know the Packers will be down some people. I just mentioned that, but it is what it is. I mean, they still have that opportunity. It's still a marquee game against a one-loss team, and I think the Raiders have a pretty good or the Cardinals have a pretty good chance to win that game. No Davante Adams feels like devastation nation for the Packers. I mean, that I think him being out moved the betting line like 3 points, which is unheard of for a receiver. We'll talk with Steve about that on the Even Money podcast.
It's that time, ladies and gentlemen. Game 1 of the World Series going down tonight in Houston. Astros hosting the Braves, and we've got our esteemed MLB panel here to help us prepare. DraftKings contributors Eric Halterman and Kenny Ducey.
All right, how are we preparing you, may I ask?
You may ask.
You may ask. With a little game of Cover the Bases. Need your favorite DFS and sportsbook plays from Game 1. Starting with first base. Eric, who is your captain for Game 1 between Atlanta and Houston?
Yeah, the way I always start these showdown slates is, can I trust any of the pitchers to go deep? Because if a pitcher is worth captaining, they pretty much have to be the guy. I mean, these pitchers score nearly twice as many points as the top hitters on a per-game basis. Obviously, you could spike a home run, but I much prefer my odds with a pitcher. And tonight, I think that'll be Charlie Morton. I think he's a lot more reliable than Framber Valdez. Down the stretch, he was much better. Valdez gave up 4 runs in 3 of his last 5 regular season starts, and 2 of his 3 postseason starts have been poor. Morton does have 1 brief start out of his 3 in the playoffs, but that was on short rest. I think he should be able to go at least 5 or 6 innings here, which should be good enough. And again, you just got to look at the average points per game for him compared to, say, the most expensive hitter, Jose Altuve. He's scoring 98 points per game, 98% more points per game, not 98 more points per game. That would be quite a lot, but 98% more than Altuve while only costing 8% more. I think that math is just too compelling. You got to go with the pitcher if you can trust him to go deep at all, and I think you can.
All righty, that leaves you, Kenny.
Yeah, well, Eric's a smart guy. That's why he took Charlie Morton, and I do think that Charlie Morton's the better of the 2 pitchers here. If I have to take a shot on a hitter, though, and we'll get to values later, and I think that there's plenty of ways you could build your lineup. You could go with one of the cheaper guys, like an Eddie Rosario, who's going to be very chalky in your captain spot, and then, use that money to get some high-priced bats in there. I think that Austin Reilly at 12.9K is an actually really intriguing option. When you look at his expected batting average against sinkers, it's .312. You look at Framber Valdez, of course, he's a sinker ball pitcher. He throws it over 51% of the time. He gives up a lot of hard hit balls. Now, Reilly hasn't homered since Game 1 of the NLCS, but he's had 2 double-digit fantasy outings in his last 5 games. I think that there is a decent chance here that he can homer off of Valdez, given his numbers against sinkers and given the fact that he's been one of the clutchest players for the Atlanta Braves the entire postseason. And I don't expect him to be very highly owned here, just considering the fact that he is expensive and he hasn't done a lot lately. He hasn't homered since game 1 of the NLCS. So if I had to take a shot, maybe him. And I really also like Ozzy Albies, of course, in this spot as well against a left-handed pitcher. We know that he can hit from the right side very well.
All right, second base is a value play that you're going to be targeting. Kenny, who is it?
Well, so again, I mentioned that there's a lot of guys, right? So everyone's going to go to Eddie Rosario here. I'm going to zig when everyone else zags, and I'm going to say Travis d'Arnaud at $6,600. Now, I know you're thinking, what is this guy talking about? Well, d'Arnaud is actually the second best guy on this team against left-handed pitching. He's one of the biggest reasons why they were able to hit lefties down the stretch. He has a hit in 3 of his last 5 games, including a multi-hit game. So if you're just looking for a guy that, could, pretty much get you a lower floor at this low price, I think Travis d'Arnaud, I don't think that he's going to wow you, right, with, 10, 15, 20 points. But, could he get you 6 or 7? Yeah, absolutely. And at this price, I think it's very worth rostering him. Also, what is going on with Michael Brantley at $6,400 on a 4-game hitting streak? 6 hits, 4 RBIs in that span. I like Michael Brantley as well. I know Eddie Rosario is the easy choice here, but those 2 guys I think are way underpriced.
All right, Eric, we need some value.
Yeah, I think I have to go all the way down to the bottom since I'm going with Charlie Morton as my likely captain. And again, the game plan here is captain the starter who is going to get the win and then try to spike as many of the home runs with the rest of your roster. And to get all the home run hitters in, I think you need to include Chas McCormick, who's just $4,200 in the utility spot. Or if it's one of the other center field options, Jake Myers or Jose Siri, they're even, I believe, slightly cheaper. But I think you have to go all the way down here. He's a real hitter, not a great one, but he was slightly above average in the regular season, 109 WRC plus, 105 WRC plus so far in the playoffs. So he's a legitimate major leaguer who's priced as, about as cheap as he can get. I will also make a quick note on Eddie Rosario, down at 6,200. It's just a fantastic deal. I do worry that everyone's going to be on him, and he's not as good against lefties, a career 86 WRC plus against lefties versus a 112 against righties. But given that there's just not that many inexpensive hitters who are actually going to be in the lineup, you may have to just include him anyway.
Well, rounding third base here with some sportsbook talk, guys. Braves are the underdogs on the road for game 1. Plus 115 on the money line. This one's kind of tough. Eric, would you take the plus money tonight? Kind of feels like this is where the value is.
Yeah, I liked the plus money yesterday at plus 115. It looks like it's just gone up to plus 120, so I like it even slightly more. The main logic here is all playoff games are closer to a coin flip than you probably think they are. So you take the plus money unless there's a good reason not to. And in this case, I like Charlie Morton more than I like Framber Valdez. I know Valdez's last start was excellent, 8 innings, 1 run, I believe it was. But he was shakier in September, 3.94 ERA compared to 2.60 ERA for Morton in that month. And Morton's been better in the playoffs. So I think when you get the pitching advantage on Atlanta's side and the fact that I'm inclined to take the plus money already, I really like Atlanta here at plus 120.
Yeah, he's also got a knack for pitching well in critical games. I know 4-1 in the playoffs here are the Astros, Kenny, but you also had the Braves like the 5th best road record in the regular season.
Yeah, wow. It's like I teed you up for this, Emerson, because Charlie Morton is 8-3 on the road with a 3.06 ERA. He's been fantastic on the road, as has this team. When you look at the OPS of the Braves, you want to be disappointed, right? 7-25 OPS. You look at the Astros, you look at this fantastic offense, you think, well, these guys are nowhere close to one another, right? Obviously, I'm going to take the favorites with Houston. But when you consider the fact that, the Braves did just have to face the Dodgers and the Brewers, 2 of the most imposing pitching staffs in baseball, it looks a little better. And then when you look at Framber Valdez, he's a left-handed pitcher. The Braves are 24th in WRC plus left-handed pitching all season long. So again, then one of those things where you go, okay, well, if they can't hit lefties, I'm not touching them here. Well, the last part of the season, they got Travis d'Arnaud back, who I mentioned was one of their best options against lefties. Eddie Rosario, actually a very big reverse splits guy this year. And then Jorge Soler was brought in to mash lefties, and he has Adam Duvall as well. I think that this lineup has a lot to be said. And yeah, Framber Valdez, he pitched great against the Red Sox. The 2 outings before that were disasters. Gave up a lot of hard hit balls, and he also gave up a lot of walks this year. And finally, the Braves, they are second to last in ground ball rate this year. So Valdez is not going to have a very easy time getting those ground balls that he wants off the sinker. I think everything comes together, and the Braves at plus 120 are the bet.
All right, let's take it home. So the game total here is 8 runs. So, I mean, Freddie Freeman, Austin Reilly, Ozzie Albies, Eddie Rosario,
Man.
Jose Altuve, Carlos Correa, Alvarez, Kyle Tucker. Like, are you going to take the over here? Or do you expect the bats to be showing up, Kenny?
Yeah, Jessie Coffield, Emerson Lotzia. I do. I think that this is a game where you get a lot of runs scored. I know that we did talk about Charlie Morton, being the better pitcher of the two, but I don't think that the Astros with this talented lineup are going to go away quietly. The Braves bullpen has also crumbled over the last month or last week or so. Those numbers have kind of come back to earth. So I do think that the Astros put a few on the board, but again, I just love this Braves offense here so much against Reimer Valdez and an Astros bullpen that I still do not trust as good, even though they have been good in the postseason. I just think that this is going to be a game where the Braves ultimately probably win at something like 6-3, and this goes over 8.
All right, are you going to roll with the over here, Eric?
I am as well. I do think, though, that this is probably our best chance at a low run total, given the two starters here, two of the best that we're going to see in this series, and given that we're seeing rested bullpen. So if you go in the under, I see the case for it. I lean over. The Braves have hit the over in half of their 10 playoff games, or hit over 8 runs, that is. They've scored 9 or more runs 5 out of 10 games this postseason. The Astros have done it 8 out of 10 games, so that's collectively 13 out of 20. Pretty clear lean towards scoring more runs. This is also being played in an American League Park, which should help that run total. Again, with Morton and Valdez, if you want to say that this is going to be no more than 4-3, I get it, but I think 5-4 shouldn't be too hard to hit.
Real quick here, guys, let's talk some extra bases. So which player prop do you have your eye on, Eric? Any other ones?
Charlie Morton is only, his over-under for strikeouts is only 4.5. He hit that in all 3 of his playoff starts, including the one in which he only threw 3 1/3 innings on short rest. He also hit that over in 27 of his 33 regular season starts. That's 83% of his starts this season. He's gone over at -125 odds. He only needs to do it 56% of the time. So it's a massive gap there. I think that's a pretty easy bet for me.
Kenny, give me a player prop, dude.
Yeah, I love that strikeout total as well. He's hit it in his last 8 postseason starts as Charlie Morton. So I'm going to go over 4.5 strikeouts for Charlie Morton. And you saw on the screen there, the Reimer Valdez under 4.5. It's juiced to -150. I maybe wait to see if that moves a little bit. But I do like the under there as well because Reimer Valdez is a pitch-to-contact guy. Though the Braves have struck out a decent amount this postseason, they're going to get the bat on the ball, Atlanta. So I think that, I'm going to go over on Morton and under on Valdez.
All right, thanks for the help, guys. Love it as always. We got a new face joining our NHL panel for opening face-off right after this.
Five games, a handful of games on this NHL slate, and we got a panel here to help you build a money-making lineup. RotoWire's Paul Bruno, you guys all know him. New to the show, Joe, joining us for the first time, Pete Jensen. host of the NHL Fantasy on Ice podcast for NHL Studios. Welcome, Pete. You've got that good internet, too, which is great. You're already way ahead, light years ahead of Kenny Ducey.
That is true. All right, need your favorite DFS plays on tonight's slate. We're going to start with who you're paying up for at center. Pete, take it away.
I'm going with Elias Lindholm for the Calgary Flames. They're facing the New Jersey Devils, who are on their third-string goalie right now, Nico Dawes. So far, so good. He beat the Sabres the other day, but I do think the way Calgary's offense is clicking lately, they're on the second of a back-to-back, but they'll be high-flying here. Elias Lindholm centers Matthew Tkachuk and Johnny Gaudreau on the top line. It was one of the most consistent under-the-radar guys last year in all of fantasy after switching from right wing to center and playing on that top line. And he's averaging 3.4 shots per game, very quietly, tied for second in the whole NHL in goals with 6 behind Ovechkin's 7. So just so much to like about Elias Lindholm and what he's doing under the radar. But his price is a little hefty because he deserves it. So I will spend up for Elias Lindholm.
All right, Paul, who are you spending up for?
Well, he was one of my 2 considerations, so hats off to Pete for uncovering that one. In considering this question, guys, I played a quick elimination game to get my best bet among the premium pivots. I'm going to fade Lindholm and Point because they both played last night, and with the Devils' Jack Hughes on the IR, that leaves me with a choice between Canucks, Elias Pettersson, and Nate McKinnon. I like the Canucks the way they played, but I think they got their hands full with Minnesota tonight. So I'm going to fade Peterson too because of a lack of the quality of the opponent. So I land on McKinnon at home against a banged-up Vegas club. These 2 teams have also built quite a rivalry recently. So I look for the Abs captain to lead the team to a lopsided win versus the Knights tonight. He's going to cost you and me $8,100. That's actually a little bit lower than I would have expected.
Let's talk wings and things. Who is your favorite winger this evening, Paul?
Again, a number of top options oppose one another tonight, Emerson. So for me, they cancel each other out a little bit too. And so the guy that stands out is Kyle Connor, who's off to a great start this season with 6 goals and 9 points in only 5 games to date. Happily for me, I also targeted him in season-long posts this season. That's why I'm smiling like the butcher's dog today. He cost $7,500 tonight as the Jets travel to Anaheim to face the Ducks, team that has been blitzed for 15 goals against in their last 3 starts. Oh yeah, and one of those was a 5-1 stomping by the Jets, with Connor accounting for 2 goals and 1 helper. I expect more of the same tonight as the Jets' top 6 forwards should enjoy a pronounced advantage against a Ducks club that is searching for options in their forward mix with a bunch of older veterans and a lot of highly touted youngsters just trying to find their way and fit together.
Pete, who's your winger in DFS tonight?
I'll go a little cheaper. Connor Garland has been a big hit since joining the Vancouver Canucks from the Arizona Coyotes in the offseason, and he started the season so far on a 6-game point streak. He's playing with Bo Horvat, who has 3 goals in his past 3 games. So that's a great matchup, especially against the Minnesota Wild, who have Joel Eriksson-Ek on the line with Kaprizov. But other than that, their center depth is not that great, in my opinion. So I think that Vancouver, their center depth, they can roll 3 strong guys with Pettersson, Miller, and Horvat. So I do think that depth for Vancouver will keep them in the game against Minnesota's strong defense. But yeah, Connor Garland playing 17-plus minutes as a secondary forward has been as consistent as anybody so far in the NHL this season.
All right, Pete, let's move to the blue line. Which defenseman do you need in your lineup?
I need Erik Karlsson, EK65 for only $4,900. He's been incredible so far. He's playing about 21 minutes a game, but they do conserve his minutes at times, which is a good thing. He's not like playing 25-plus minutes a game like he used to in his heyday, but that has led to the early signs of a bounce-back season for Karlsson. 6 points in 5 games. He's doing some work on the power play, which is great to see. The Sharks paid, handsomely to get this player a couple of years ago, and last year was the first time pretty much ever that he was healthy and didn't perform up to expectations. But I do think the clean slate, some young guns around him, William Eklund, Jonathan Dahlen, these are some guys that have changed the outlook for San Jose very quickly. They're 4-1-0, and favorable matchup against the Nashville Predators. So I do think the Sharks can win that game. And I think Carlson keeps the good times rolling for now, at least.
All right, Paul, which defenseman do you want in your lineup?
You know what, Pete? I got to say, I'm on the other guy in that lineup who has kind of revitalized his career, and that's Brett Burns. He's won me over with a return to the style that made him a high-event player who logs a ton of ice time, particularly on the power play. But he's a menace when this team's on the man advantage, but he's also a threat at even strength. He looks like he's come to play again and removes the doubts that I had about him for much of the last 2 seasons, in fact. And the Sharks have had a very impressive start, as you touched on, with all the other factors thrown in. Throw in the fact that the Preds also have stumbled out of the gate and are looking loose defensively, and I'm picking Burns for $6,400 tonight.
All right, dudes, who do you like between the pipes tonight? I know there's not a whole lot confirmed at this point, so maybe like a matchup you like, Paul?
There's a couple. It depends on how much money I spend elsewhere. The budget distribution of my roster will certainly determine the way I go. I'm going to go definitely on the high side with the Avalanche tonight in their matchup against the Knights. I touched on that. Should be a lopsided win for the Colorado club, but their goalies are at the top of the draft board, so that's going to cost me $500 for Kemper. He's my guy if I can fit him in, but if I can't, I will pivot to James Reimer in goal for San Jose, costing me only $7,300. I like the way the Sharks have looked so far this season. I mentioned as one of the most pleasant surprises, and they're playing with loads of confidence. That same element and a surprising lack of structure in the Predators camp causes me to see a high win probability for the visitors in this matchup.
Okay, Pete, how about you, dude? Potential goalie you like tonight between the pipes?
So I'm going James Reimer for all those reasons and more that we talked about with the San Jose Sharks. I mean, I think Reimer has done as much as he possibly could have so far through 2 appearances, 50 saves on 51 shots faced, .980 save percentage. He and Aiden Hill have quietly made the Sharks one of the bigger surprises in the whole league this season. You look at Nashville, 2 wins in their first 6 games. They made a lot of moves in the offseason to downgrade, like trading Ryan Ellis, trading Victor Arvidsson. They're not helping this team in the short term anymore. And then you look at Eli Tolvanen, one of the top scorers for Nashville on paper, got banged up over the weekend, so he might not play. So if Reimer's in the crease for San Jose, I like his chances against Nashville on the road. And I think that's just like kind of a ride the hot hand thing. But I definitely see the appeal in Kemper with Colorado facing Vegas without Stone and Pacioretty. That's a slam dunk as well. I just think that you could probably get maybe a little more value in James Reimer, especially considering even without those top guys, Colorado kind of let Vegas get in their heads a little bit last postseason. So who knows if that's going to carry over.
All right, Pete, finally hit us with your favorite value play on the slate tonight.
Sure. I mean, definitely keep an eye on the status of Sidney Crosby. I don't think he's going to play, but you never know. It sounds like he's on his way to a potential return in not too distant future, hopefully. But Drew O'Connor for the Pittsburgh Penguins has been excellent in a secondary role. He's playing right now with Jason Zucker and Danton Heinen, 2 productive players in the early going. Only $3,300 against the Tampa Bay Lightning, who the Penguins beat on opening night in convincing fashion. And then, the Bolts are going to be on the second of a back-to-back here after losing to Buffalo. There is some bounce-back appeal with Tampa Bay, but Drew O'Connor quietly tied for second in rookie scoring behind Lucas Raymond of the Red Wings, who's been a stud as well. But he's not playing tonight, so I'll go Drew O'Connor at the center position, $3,300 for the Penguins.
All right, Paul, what's your favorite value play on the slate?
You guys remember opening night when I kind of touted the Montreal Canadiens? Well, I'm going to do it again just for another dose so that I can keep them down on the bottom of the league. I look for value in their first line pivot for the Canadiens as Nick Suzuki's priced only at $5,300 tonight in what should be a favorable matchup for the visitors. He's only got 1 point in 6 games. But his club finally got off the schneid with their first win in their last game, and he's overdue for a breakout effort. A little further down the list, I really like Naz Kadri of the Avalanche. He'll be focused on getting the checking away from the checking assignments. The Knights will be focused on McKinnon, and so he should get some real good matchups. He's also a factor on their power play. And in addition, I also like on the back end Jamie Drysdale of the Ducks for $3,900. He's quarterbacking the top unit for Anaheim there. And the rookie has 3 points in 6 games while logging over 21 minutes a night. He has a tough matchup against the Jets, but I'm counting on a parade to the penalty box in this rematch to feature him in that power play unit.
That's it, guys. Appreciate it. Good having you on, Pete. Welcome to the family. You're one of us now. You can also, everybody watching right now, listen to Pete Jensen and Rob Reese on the NHL Fantasy on Ice podcast. They cover daily fantasy as well as season-long and betting trends every Monday and Thursday during the NHL season. Check that out wherever you get your podcast. And you can also check out their content by visiting nhl.com/fantasy. But coming up, NBA Chase or Fade. We're heading home. Final block of the show right after this.
Say hello to our NBA panel, DraftKings contributor Gary and Thorne, along with RotoWire's Nick Whalen and host of the Four Seasons podcast for Ball is Life, Ryan Mogjosh.
All right, dudes, NBA Chase or Fade. So chase or fade these DFS and sportsbook takes for tonight's NBA slate. We will start with a 5-game classic contest. That's where we're going to focus right now. Tonight, let's look at some of the top salaries. So LeBron James and the Lakers aren't off to the best start. You know, they appear to be broken. 3 games in, 1-2 to take on the Spurs. LeBron is banged up with ankle soreness, but is expected to play tonight. Like the entire league is already questionable. Are you chasing LeBron at 9,400 and potentially some depressed ownership, or would you fade him for someone else with a top salary, Garion?
Yeah, well, I guess we should start by saying in the last 10 minutes, LeBron's gone from probable to questionable. So you never really want to see players moving the opposite direction like that, but there's still a lot of time before tip-off. However, even if he does play, I just don't think this is all that great a spot, especially considering some of the other star power we have on this slate. I mean, I'll never say LeBron's not viable on a slate, but when you've got Stephen Curry and Nikola Jokic and Julius Randle, just to name a few guys who I'd rather be spending money on, I don't think I'm going to fit LeBron into that many builds. And it's really just for the reasons that we all sort of worried about during the offseason, having him play next to a ball-dominant point guard like Russell Westbrook. His usage rate right now at 28.1% is the lowest it's been since his sophomore season. His 22.8% assist rate is the lowest of his career. Now, again, a 22.8% assist rate for a small forward, pretty amazing, but it's not that great for LeBron. So I just can't see myself spending up this amount of money, again, with the quality of player we have aside from LeBron on this slate.
Nick, what do you want to do here?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like you have too many other elite options. You got Curry, you got Doncic, you got Jokic, you got Randall, you got even Anthony Davis, LeBron's teammate. All those guys are 9,200 or higher. So plenty of options if you don't trust LeBron James. I do think he probably plays in this game, going from probable to questionable. We've seen LeBron do this. I think he was questionable for an entire season, 2 seasons ago. He's always been one to kind of play up these minor injuries and make it seem like he's pushing through something that ultimately maybe isn't all that serious. So I do expect him to play, but that is something you have to factor in that, if he's playing at 90% and you're already worried that maybe he isn't looking quite like himself, especially as a distributor, like Garion said, there are just too many other options on this slate. There are only 5 games, but plenty of elite guys to pivot to.
Ryan, you want him? You want the king in your lineup?
No, I don't. I'm fading a LeBron who's going to not really care about traveling to San Antonio and play game 3 the whole season. And Garion just mentioned my big 3 that I'd rather start over LeBron, and they all cost more than him. Steph versus OKC, that game's going to be high scoring. Jokic versus Utah is a primetime game, the latest game that we have. And then Julius Randle literally does everything for the Knicks versus Philly, and Madison Square Garden is very back. So I'd rather play all 3 of those guys over a banged-up LeBron.
All right, let's talk about some value here. Nick, who's a value play that you're chasing today?
I like Alfred Shangoon at 4,300 against Dallas tonight for Houston. He's got 26 DraftKings points in 2 of his first 3 games. He's not playing quite as many minutes as I had hoped. I think as the season goes on, he probably takes on a larger role for the Rockets as they, eventually tumble down the Western Conference standings. But he's been right around 20 minutes so far on most nights. Can offer points, rebounds, assists. He's got 7 steals through 3 games. He is turnover prone, however, so that is the one drawback. But I like Shangoon at 4,300. If you've been hot on DraftKings and you're feeling kind of a heat check, pick between Isaiah Roby at 3,700, Mike Muscala at 3,500. And the rookie Jeremiah Robinson-Earl at 3,200. One of those guys I think is going to go off tonight. I don't know which of those 3. Derek Favors is out for rest. OKC is trying to get a look at some new center options. I think I would lean Robinson-Earl. He seems like the safest to me, which is crazy to say for a $3,200 player. But Isaiah Roby was a DNP CD in their last game, so it looks like he may have fallen out of favor already.
All right, Ryan, we need a value play.
I like the Shangoon call. I've already fallen in love with him on Houston. That's a sexy pick. But Nick is kind of on the right track. I have Darius Bazley, though, who also can play center for OKC. Like he said, Favors is out. The Warriors like to play small ball. The only centers they got tonight are Bielitsa and Draymond, and those are undersized centers. So I like Bazley being active, and he's only $5K, so it's kind of a pay-up versus the other guys that he said that can play center for OKC. But Bazley's going to get a lot of minutes tonight.
All right, Garion, value play.
Yeah, I really like Keldon Johnson. He's $5,200, and it's not often you can get a guy who's leading his team in usage rate like Johnson is. The Spurs, pretty, balanced attack, I would say, through the first 3 games, but Johnson's still carrying a 26.3% usage rate. He scored 23.5 points per game his last 2 starts, and the Lakers are kind of the perfect DFS opponent so far this season. Not only do they have the 6th worst defensive rating in the NBA, they also operate at the 4th highest offensive pace. So there should be a lot of possessions in this game. And the Lakers just can't really defend. So I think Johnson and a lot of the Spurs, to be honest, in this mid-tier are in a really nice spot.
All right, guys, over on the DK Sportsbook, you can get close to even money on the Sixers to defeat the Knicks in Madison Square Garden tonight. So both teams 2-1 on the year. New York coming off a loss to O-Town. You chasing or fading the Sixers tonight, Garion?
I think I'm going to fade the Sixers and chase the Knicks. Bing bong, as it were. I just look at this Sixers team, and, first and foremost, much like LeBron, I guess we have to mention that Joel Embiid is questionable for this game, although I think Joel Embiid might be questionable every game this season. So, it's game 4. We haven't gotten quite tired of it yet, but the Sixers have had a really hard time covering on the road as an underdog. In fact, in their last 28 games in that scenario, they've covered 6 times. Conversely, the Knicks have covered 15 of their last 21 home games as the favorite. I really like Julius Randle tonight. I think he can just do a lot here. And, yeah, I'll side with the Knicks at home.
Okay, Ryan, who you siding with?
I'm also fading the Sixers. This game is at Madison Square Garden, and it's nuts. The Knicks fans have already had a taste for postseason basketball. So this season, right on the jump, they're already all in. And games on TV that you watch at Madison Square Garden feel different, like that overtime or super high-scoring close game against Boston the other night. That was incredible. And plus, the Knicks have a lot of bodies to throw at a banged-up Embiid now because Taj is back in. Nerlens Noel is upgraded to questionable. Mitch Robinson's a beast already this season. So not only do I like the matchups against their one stud in Embiid, but Julius Randle doing everything for them at Madison Square Garden. I'm chasing the Knicks.
Okay, Nick, you chasing or fading the Sixers?
We're going 3 for 3 here. I'm fading the Sixers, chasing the Knicks. New York's coming off of that fairly shocking loss to the Orlando Magic, who looked terrible before that game. But I think this is a really good spot for them to bounce back. Like Ryan said, they're at home. There are very few teams that have a true home court advantage in the NBA during the regular season. And the Knicks are absolutely at the top of that list, especially when you're talking first week of the season, when a lot of crowds really aren't at their peak. MSG has been bringing it night to night. I think that won't change. Obviously, Embiid banged up. That's something that even if he was healthy, I think I still might chase the Knicks in this game. His backup, Andre Drummond, is banged up. Some of their guard depth is banged up. They obviously have not replaced what they've lost in Ben Simmons. This team is middle of the pack defensively so far, are the Sixers. They were number 2 last season. So luckily the offense has been really good. They've gotten some great shooting from some role players to help offset that. But without Simmons, that defense just hasn't been there. And I think that's going to be a problem against the Knicks, who are kind of right up there with a team like Atlanta as maybe one of the deepest teams, not only in the East, but in the entire NBA.
All right, Warriors and Thunder have the highest game total on the board tonight, sitting at 223.5 as we speak. So are you chasing or fading the over here, Garion?
I've got to fade the over. This really has nothing to do with Golden State. They score wonderfully. They have the second highest pace in the NBA. But how can you honestly expect Oklahoma City to keep up their end of the bargain in this game? I mean, right now they have the second worst offensive rating in basketball. They're scoring less than 95 points per 100 possessions. They operate at the 4th slowest pace in the NBA. It's just hard to see a scenario where they score 105, 106 points. And in such a scenario, you're going to need Golden State to score 120, 125 to hit the over here. That's not necessarily unlikely, but it's not something I really want to bank on, especially considering there's blowout potential here. Like, how do we know Steph Curry is going to play his full allotment of minutes? Maybe he plays 28 and doesn't have to touch the court in the fourth quarter. So I just don't think Oklahoma City supplies enough for me to feel confident in taking this over.
All right, you taking the over, Nick?
Absolutely not. Garion took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, this total is already up 1.5 points over where it's at earlier this morning, and I still like the under quite a bit. That makes me feel even more comfortable. I don't think the Warriors are going to have any trouble scoring in this game. Should be a pace-up game for OKC. Like Garion said, they're bottom 5 early on in pace, but I just don't see Oklahoma City scoring enough points here. They've scored 86, 91, and 103 so far in their 3 games. And that 103, a lot of those came in garbage time. That game was pretty much over, like all 3 of their games have been, early in the second half. So I think this is a night where they could once again be held under 100 points. And, even if Golden State has a great first half and puts the game away and, Golden State gets to like 120, 125, I just don't trust the Thunder to hold up their end of the bargain here.
Do you trust the Thunder to hold up their end of the bargain, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm chasing this. I'm going over. A lot of teams play up to the pace of the Warriors. The Warriors control the pace almost every single game. The Thunder are young. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is remembering how to play basketball. Last game, he had 29, 6, and 8. And I like the way he looked. It does have a blowout warning, a blowout factor, and you guys said it. Who knows how many quarters Steph's going to play. But the guys that the Warriors are going to give time to, Jordan Poole has never seen a shot that he doesn't like. He's going to be chucking. I think both teams are going to be running up and down, chucking the ball up. I like Josh Giddey, too, for Oklahoma City. I think he has a lot of potential. But it was close for me, but I'm going over.
All right, guys, Slater-proof pick. Need it. Favorite DFS play or sportsbook bet. Or, hell, give us both. Ryan.
Or one.
All right, I'm going DFS, my favorite DFS play. And this is kind of, I'm a narrative guy.
Ooh.
I like narratives.
Yeah.
Dejante Murray.
Oh, no.
Dude, what a cliffhanger.
Literally,
like,
what a cliffhanger.
No, I need to know.
Why?
I need to know.
Why? All right, move on.
Nick, next.
I need to know what the answer is there. I like the Warriors. I'm going to the DK Sportsbook. We just talked about this game. I love the Warriors to cover 8.5 at OKC. Thunder have lost all 3 games by double digits. They're the second worst defense. They're the second worst offense. They lost by 33 to the lowly Houston Rockets over the weekend. They have a minus 22.3 net rating. That is the worst in the league by nearly 8 points per 100. I see no reason not to roll with Steph and the Warriors tonight.
All right, Garion, help us out.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the DFS play. I just like Julius Randle. I think Nick mentioned earlier he's doing everything for the Knicks right now, and he is. He's been absolutely incredible. 28, 11, and 6, 33% usage rate. Anytime he's below $10,000, I think he's just an automatic play at this point.
All right, Ryan,
We're
back
hearing
very
that
quick.
you're back.
So you said Dejante Murray, and then you froze, and we're like, tell us why.
So you guys did hear Dejante Murray.
Yep.
He's my narrative guy. $7,300 versus LA. He's a clutch sports guy. I have this narrative that all these young guys in the league that play against LeBron and AD bring their A game, especially because he's clutch sports. AD, LeBron, clutch guys. Dejante Murray is going to go nuts tonight. That's just my narrative, street narrative.
All right, we love it.
Dude, I'm
That's
so happy
show.
we got the rest of that answer because I was going to find you.
Yeah, we were going to be
People here, I just
wondering.
received 20 emails. People were like, what is he talking about?
Yeah, of course you did. Good stuff, guys. Thank you. As always, that is the show. Madden starts at noon. The slate starts at 5 p.m. We'll be back tomorrow at 11. See you then.